What were you doing in your preparation even before you started the consultation?
Initially, what I did was I had a template. I created a template for myself um, that I used initially until I was confident that I had kind of ingrained that in myself. I added those bits that I usually forget, those bits that didn't come naturally to me. So that's what I did. I had a very clear structure. I had a structure that was personalized to me in terms of what I was comfortable saying, what I was comfortable doing. I know there are lots of different templates out there, but from practice, from recording, I created this template. So what I did before the consultation specifically was read the notes, but I stopped reading the notes too much because I found that it was creating this parallel, very distracting um, story that I almost like had my own agenda. So again, different people might have, different experiences. It might not be a challenge for you, but I found that when I read it in depth too much, I kind of thought that I knew what was going on, and then I wasn't asking them those questions. So there are two things here. One of them is if you're confident that you can read the notes, know what happened in 2018, know what happened in 2020, and still elicit that information, even if you know it in the consultation, then go ahead and read the note in there for 5 minutes. But for me, going through the problem list, going through, the medication that they were on, seeing is there any interaction that might prevent me from using this, or even if I mention it in the clinical management bit, it just makes me look more safe. I'm aware you've had this, so we cannot use this option. Or I'm aware you've had this, and I can suggest an addition of this medication to counter this, but I wouldn't recommend this because you've had this. It, for the examiner's perspective, it makes you look good from the patient's perspective because I know we're going to get to the bit of management. It makes them feel like you know them. So I wasn't overdoing the preparation. I was thinking about the clinical management bit. So I started it from the end and then came back. Tried not to have my own agenda too much. I tried not to over prepare. My It was tripping me up. I wasn't listening. I wasn't um, paying attention to what they were saying. I wasn't curious because I thought that I knew what was going on. So I kind of balanced it out. And then my other preparation was I think I used the symptom checker. Is it a symptom sorter? I think symptom sorter or symptom solver. And I had 3 or 4 differentials for every presentation. And then with time, it's a skill that I kind of developed of kind of um, stating these differentials very briefly and clearly that this is what I have in mind. Can I just ask a few questions? And then that helped me to be focused. So even when the patient goes off and starts saying about something, I can say something like, well, I just need to ask a few questions just to make sure we're not dealing with the blood clot here, and then we'll talk about this. So that kind of helped me. So yeah, beginning with the end in mind, thinking what will be good to safety net. So who lives with this patient? You're thinking about sepsis and you're telling the patient that they might be drowsy. Does someone live with them? And I tell the patient to just make sure that they tell their wife that if they're ever drowsy, this is a red flag. Going back to the management plan, is there anything that might influence the management plan? Have they had physio before? Have they had physio recently? As compared to just thinking, oh, knee pain, I'm going to suggest physio and painkillers. I'm thinking, I don't want to be blindsided. What medications have they tried? Have they seen the orthopedic doctors? And then I ask those questions. Or I say, I can see you've seen the orthopedic doctors, but it's not really clear from the letter what you agreed. Can you just tell me a little bit more? And then they talk about it. So I've killed, 2 birds with one stone. I'm putting everything in context. and then I gradually go back, to the beginning. So yeah, that was it for me.
Beginning in with the end in mind is very important. Oftentimes in the clinical management, this is where it takes more time for you to think what it is that you need to do. But if you've already thought through this and play it out in your mind, then you have various avenues how you're going to play out the clinical management. So with regards to the shared management, then what were the things that you found that you were not doing right before the attempt that you passed, and how did you have to change things so that you managed to develop shared management in Amuna?
The greatest change I made was, again, how I understood what was required of me. So I'll put it as three things just to make it simple. One of them was understanding that there's a certain skill that I needed to develop, as compared to just finding the whole clinical management bit frustrating and difficult. I narrowed it down to skills. And by skills, I mean phrases, and phrases that I could use in different scenarios. So it's a case of, um, do I need to use motivational interviewing here? Do I need to, is it a case of, now I need to respect this patient's autonomy? Or is it a case of just, cut and dry, management options here, painkillers? Or is it a case of hospital or this? And then just being that intentional, to just divide it so that I'm able to recognize these scenarios. And then once I do that, I'm able to use those skills. And by skills, nothing fancy, I just mean phrases to navigate through. So that's one. It's just skill demonstrated by phrases. My ability to respond to these, what the patient is saying, what the patient is thinking, what the patient is concerned about. And the second thing was understanding that I wasn't telling the patient to do anything. The second bit is had the greatest impact, and it transformed my clinical management bit. In my mind, I'm a salesman, so I'm not telling them to do anything. I'm basically recommending and suggesting. And again, there are scenarios where you wouldn't recommend and suggest. You would basically tell them they had a stroke or a myocardial infarction. You wouldn't suggest the hospital, appointment. You wouldn't, suggest that they ring 999. That's an emergency. You will tell them your clinical opinion. You will state it, explain the risk to them. You might be more emphatic and less negotiating, but there are other scenarios where this has to come into play. So once I understood that bit, patient autonomy, I am not telling them anything. I am recommending. I'm simply, this is my clinical opinion. It's really up to you. You might just stop short of making that statement of saying it's up to you, but I kept that at the front of my mind. It is up to you. I will recommend. And then the third bit, let me not digress. The third bit is just the language. Native English speakers might find this second nature, so you might not have to think about this, but I had to make a very conscious choice to use words like suggest, like recommend, and similar phrases to really give the patient that sense of choice. Even if there is limited, choice, but it's you're empowering them to make a decision. So it's a case of asking yourself, how have I empowered this patient to make a decision? So just, and we can talk about, we will, let's say we might talk about that in more detail, but that approach, understanding that, I'm not telling them anything, I'm not instructing them to do anything, I am suggesting, I'm like a salesman, I'm giving them the options, I'm giving them the information that they need. Ultimately, it's their decision to make. Understanding the scenarios that I shouldn't be using that. changing my language to sound more like a salesman. I'm not forcing anybody to do anything. I'm not imposing my opinion or recommendations, and then I'm giving them that power. Um, that generally was what made a difference for me.
You had to change your language, and the way you were addressing the patient was you're respecting the patient's autonomy, and you're not compelling the patient to make a decision. So you are supporting them to make that decision. And ideally, you want to help your patient to make an informed decision. So our job as doctors is to give our professional opinion so that the patient can make a decision. So often doctors would make the decision already for the patient and then say to the patient, are you okay with that? Which is not the way you want to go with the RCA. Because if you do that, then what happens is that you've not involved your patient in that decision-making process. So it's very important to be able to discuss it with your patient so that they can come to a conclusion with you. Are you struggling with your consultation skills? Maybe you need help and you want to get constructive feedback. If you'd like to get help, then click the link down the description below to see whether I can help you. If I can help you, then we can enroll you on the one-to-one coaching program. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.